Welcome to Leadership Talks with your host, Dr. Kate Vawter. In each episode, Kate speaks with successful leaders across industries, real people, and local leaders. Each of her conversations explore different leadership styles, how people achieve unbelievable success, overcoming challenges, and how to become the best in the world. You can find this show at www.ascentsolutions.net and on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Now here's the host of Leadership Talk, Dr. Kate Vawter.
Hello, welcome to Leadership Talks. How are you, Maria?
I'm good, Kate. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I'm so happy to have you today.
Thanks for having me.
This is Maria Vassett, who is an owner and founder of the Salted Knot, which happens to be, in my opinion, the best pretzel in the world. It's so tasty.
Thank you.
If they were in my kitchen, I would eat them always. My choices.
That's the goal on our end, right?
Yeah, they're so good though.
Thank you.
Maria and I met at a local event and decided to connect. And so we actually haven't spent a ton of time together. So I don't know all the stories yet. So if you're open to it, I'm going to ask questions about your story and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. I'm in.
Awesome. So I'm curious so the Salted Knot has been around for a couple years, but before we dive into the Salted Knot, I'm curious what the point of inflection was that got you to that point.
Sure. So we are a COVID business. It really started with just me wanting to make a pretzel from scratch because we were at home and I didn't jump into the baking thing like everybody had right away. We were near the end. It was like November of 2020. I worked as a social worker in the Gila River Reservation. And so all of my clients and my sessions now were based out of telehealth. And I also had a second job as a concert photographer. For 14 years. So I worked as the house photographer for Live Nation and freelanced for the Arizona Republic and Rolling Stone and New Times, you name it. So it was like super passion. I loved it. It was one of my favorite things to do. But considering both don't pay very well, that was like brought in together and it worked and it was great. So when COVID came, as we all know, there were no concerts left. Nobody was doing concerts. So that income for us completely was gone. The goal starting Pretzels was not to be a business. It was strictly just to do something different. So when I saw that there was a KitchenAid on sale at Target, I was like, mask on, everything in and out, grabbed it. And I thought I could make a pretzel out of a silicone donut like sheet. And I wanted to see what that would look like. And it did not look good at all. It did not work out. So I thought, I'm just going to make a traditional pretzel. I found a recipe, started rolling it and still didn't look very pretty and kept trying. And all of a sudden, welcome to YouTube University, how to roll a pretzel. And so, so rolled it out. Chad, my husband, Chad, also was at home. He was a professor and had taken on a faculty job working in the writing center. So he too was only, doing a couple of days from home. So we just started rolling pretzels and brought them to friends of ours who at that point maybe weren't doing so well or just needed a little pick me up and just maybe a reason for us to see each other through the car window. So it was wonderful. So they really liked them. People were just like, these are amazing. I still felt though that there was something that was missing. So Chad and I kept talking about it and ended up like boiling. We haven't boiled them. Let's boil them. And I kid you not, when we put that pretzel into that boiling water, I knew our whole life had changed. I told him, I said, that's $1 million pretzel right there. And it changed everything. We tried it. The taste was different. It was way better than what we thought was already good. So we had our other friends try them out. People loved them. So I was like, I'm going to have the population, test them. So I put it on Facebook Marketplace and to see if anybody would come to the house and pick up some pretzels. And man, I had no idea what I was getting into. So it was a little crazy.
Get this straight.
Yeah.
Some of your first sales were literally selling pretzels through Facebook Marketplace.
Correct. Our first dollar was made through a random stranger that came to our house. Yes.
And bought food, because that's fine.
And bought food, because I too was like, well, are people going to buy food during COVID from somebody they don't know? Or I had no idea. And so it ended up for 9 months. And then a few months in, a couple weeks in, our neighbors were like, what's going on over there? And we were like, yeah, we're selling pretzels, and they were like, so that's how we got the nickname Pretzel Pushers, back from the 70s old drug pushers, right? So it's like, we're called Pretzel Pushers. So that's like our little nickname. We have, our shirts are Pretzel Pushers. Our staff are called Pretzel Pushers. Like, it's just a fun thing that our neighbors had come up with. So, so we did everything. I mean, for 9 months, all by hand. I was DMing people, messaging, texting. People were coming to our house. I was like, we are not a store. Like, you need to order ahead of time. Somehow they found us, even though our address wasn't present. We only gave the address when somebody would order. I'm sure that got around a little bit.
Because the pretzels were so good.
Yeah, they're so good.
Like drugs in the 70s.
Totally. So, so we finally got a website up, and, we tried different things. We were doing butter and salt, of course, and then we were doing sweet, and we were making bites. So our biggest seller was a curbside special. It was 6 butter salt knots with 8 sweet bites, which were, butter with cinnamon and sugar. Can't go wrong with that. And we made a sweet dip, which we still sell, which is cream cheese, vanilla, and a little bit of powdered sugar. So it's not like a frosting, but it's a nice dip. And we bought boxes, and I bought a stamp. And I just, my old history was like, I was in the music business for years. So I ran the business as a band, because I didn't know how to really run a business. And so that was the only way I knew it. And I knew how to run a calendar, and I knew how to like maneuver and change things. And I mean, those skills really came in handy for this.
Absolutely.
So after, we had been contacted by the news, people wanted to come and do interviews, and Chad and I would just look at each other and say, pretzels, who knew? Like, what?
Right. They are very good.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. They are. Yeah. And so the news came. That was cool. And then a few weeks later, another news station came, wanted to come. And I had just watched another small business do an interview with them. And it was really, we both know that sometimes people don't have a lot going on, and they like to watch things and comment and cause problems. So, this other small business had just opened up their first storefront, and the news came in, and people complained that their staff were not rolling dough or making dough with gloves on. Well, by law, you don't have to do that. Because it's not a cooked product. So unfortunately, I watched him spend 5 minutes talking about this on Instagram instead of really celebrating his small business, which is what should have really happened, So for me, I was like, okay, let's move everything outside. We're very lucky to have a very beautiful backyard, set up all the pretzels. The news came. Again, we were going to be very transparent. I just didn't want anybody in my kitchen to be seeing anything. It's like, we're a cottage kitchen. We have a license, but it's like, it's our kitchen. So news came, and then we got a call from the health department saying, somebody complained that you're selling cheese. And I was like, okay. So they're like, no cheese. You can't sell any cheese or dips. So I had to reshoot everything, redo the website, no dips. And a couple months later, now we had been doing it for almost a year, and Chad and I decided it was time to, I was like, look, we've tapped out. We're 4 days a week here from 8:30 until 6 p.m. We're just cranking. We had 4 convection ovens out of our house, plus we changed our whole kitchen into like a full-on business, you know, which is cool, but it was just like, I want my life back a little bit. So we found a commercial kitchen, and moved into, it's called Our Community Kitchen, and it's fantastic. It's beautiful. There's 60 other small businesses in there. You pick the time that works, so for this last year, so that was in December. So it was almost exactly a milestone of 1 year that we had moved into a commercial kitchen. And when we did that, we also agreed that, we needed to figure out another type of income, which was doing markets. So the love of markets began for us, and the trial and error of how to heat pretzels at a market. So we did that. And, we started at one location. It didn't really work for us. We started with ovens that were made out like propane ovens. We thought that would work. Ended up giving away, like, the first time 200 pretzels to people for free. We're like, take them home, heat them up. Like, we can't do it for you. And so that's kind of just like, I know I'm just going, but I mean, that's just kind of how it went. It just kept going and growing, and we just couldn't keep up with everything. So, so now we moved into the kitchen, and then we went to Uptown Phoenix Market and got into that market, which is an amazing market. It's one of the biggest in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like I think it's top 25, one of the biggest.
What's the process to get into a market like that?
Sure.
How do you go?
Yeah. And, and if you're not familiar with farmers markets, like, and we weren't, like, I had been to a couple, of course, but I wasn't, there are people that are diehard. They go every weekend, they get their produce, they get their goods, they get what they like, and that lasts them for the week, and they come back. We are so grateful for those people, but we didn't know anything about that prior. So we just started asking people in our kitchen that were doing markets, like, which ones are the, most successful, or like, where do you go and what does that look like? So we were able to get a couple of names of the people that were running those markets. And we had been told that, like, sometimes there's a 2-year waiting list to get in. Yeah. And so I was like, I've done marketing and things like that my whole life. So I was like, what's the worst thing somebody can say is no, right? If you don't, you got to try. So, so I emailed Uptown to Bo, and I just said, we sell pretzels from, handmade, hand rolled pretzels from scratch, and we would love to be a part of the community. Like, how do we get in? And we did a couple of Wednesdays. She let us do that, and we were selling out. So she was like, come on Sunday or on Saturdays. So it was great. And we had we go through like 300 pretzels, a day in 4 hours, 5 hours, which we were super grateful for. And then, so we got,
Well, I'm curious about how you go from 0 pretzels to 300 pretzels. Like, how many do you bake at a time? Like,
it's
a lot? I don't know. I'm not a pretzel pusher.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's totally fair. Well, we don't know either, because it's really a hit and miss. It's really more like, it's gambling, right? You don't know how many people are going to show up. You don't know if there's a holiday. Will people come during holiday? Is it starting to get hot out? So we started with doing like just low amounts and having to just kind of build. We started noticing, as a new vendor, people are always excited to support, new vendors at farmers markets, for sure. So, we weren't even set up, and we'd have a line, and people would be like, we saw you on the news, or we've heard about you. And it's just like, it's so weird. We just, we're like, something's happening. We're just not,
right.
We're just staying in our I'm like, I don't know what's happening. So, so that was really cool. So even now, like, it's kind of hit, we sometimes, majority of the time, very lucky, we sell out. We bring about, depending again, 250 to 300, depending on the market. We're also at Gilbert Market. We got into Gilbert Market a couple months after we were at Uptown. And it's just been a fantastic experience, and very, very grateful that people take the time to come. I know we have a really good product, but it's also about, people that have been like, we came to your house. We used to come to your house and pick up pretzels, and they still come. And it's like, just the way that things are going right now in the world and economy. And, even I know that we charge $8 for a pretzel, and there's some people that they're not cool with that. And I get it. But we also, at the beginning, for a 50-pound bag of flour was $7. Now it's 20, so you have to figure out, where your costs are. And we have 5 employees. So it's, we have to run the markets. We have to be able to make the pretzels too. We just don't, people will ask us, they'll say, do you make these, actually make them? And I can be a little smart sometimes and say, no, we got them at Costco and we just feed them up. It's just like, we're not for everybody. I get it, but it's also like, this is our livelihood now. I left my social, I worked in behavioral health, doing social work for years and years, and left last October. And this is how we make our money. Chad's at MCC 1 day a week, still doing the writing center, but this is my business. This is how, I make a living. And I think sometimes people don't really understand that when going to a market, or understanding the pricing is probably a little bit higher than they would see somewhere else.
Yeah, the thing I'm learning about, the more small businesses that let me dive in, the more I'm learning about the math and the data. And as a self-proclaimed data nerd, I also teach it. Like, how many pretzels did you sell? And what was the ROI? And how do we have this and change the math? It's just, there's so many layers that go into making a decision about price, or making a decision about where to go and who to hire and how much to pay them and what benefits to offer, and just the many layers that really can, it's this balance of math and people and care. But I digress. I want to circle back to October and you making the decision to say, you know what, this wonderful career that I've had, I'm going to not do that anymore. What was that process like for you?
Well, I mean, I'm coming from an organization that allowed me to have my own schedule. I could schedule the way I wanted to, again, because we were from home. And I just, I think in real life with people that work in behavioral health and work in social work and do that job, even to a level like, I know what I did, but I know what other people do as well. And there's a time when it's your time. And I think it's time, at that point, I was really like, where's my mental health at? And, when I had the joy of photography, I had the joy of making pretzels. I'm really well known for my side hustles. My license plate says side hustle. I've always made it happen, always. But when you have a job that gives you freedom, along with, they paid for our benefits, everything, it was really a question of, this is something that's actually happening and it needs my 100% attention. So, of course, money discussions, very lucky to have a partner he's just a badass. I mean, he's just really, I couldn't ask for a better person in my life, to be honest. So, I mean, we just really did the numbers and talked about it. And it took a couple of months, but I think mentally I was just ready. I think it's a hard profession for sure. So I love my kids. I love my families that I worked with and my clients. But I think it was another opportunity to say, okay, now it's time for me. So we made the decision that in October, that would be a good time, because that's when our season really starts. And again, being able to do a little bit of marketing more so that I'd have open time and not have to worry about the day job. So, and I went back to shooting a little bit. I shot it for Celebrity Theater for a while. And again, I was like, I love the opportunity, but I can't, it just wasn't a good balance at that point. So yeah. And so, it felt like I was on vacation maybe for a couple of weeks,
Right.
and then you have
Yeah.
that realization of, I don't have a job. I don't have a job with benefits. But it was the most amazing feeling to think like, in not even 2 years, I've been able to accomplish something that's an excellent product that people really enjoy. It brings joy to people. It brings memories for people. People like to tell me stories about how their children have never had a pretzel and it was their first one. I mean, that to me is like,
That's so sweet.
that's worth, I know it's worth everything to me. And they, we have people come that say like, when I was a kid and I lived in New York and the people would be selling pretzels on the street and they love to share. Storytelling is for me, I can't ask for anything better than to have somebody be able to connect with our product because it brings memories for them or it's giving other people memories. And that's a whole nother thing that like, you can't buy that, that just comes just genuinely. So it has definitely filled my cup a different way to have that happiness as well as social work did. But this is a whole different, feeling of just happiness,
That's
so
awesome.
thank you. Thanks. So, and again, it's like, I have a great partner. We have a great team of people. We have a fantastic staff. We're very lucky. And we just have the incredible support. The city of Tempe has been amazing to us. Mayor Corey Woods is fantastic to us. And, to have that kind of support in your community, you can't, again, it's just, we're just so grateful, so that's kind of where we're at.
Well, where do you think you're headed?
Well, so, because the same thing is happening within the markets, right? We only work, so we're in the kitchen only 2 days. So we only have 12 hours a week in the kitchen. We're receiving so many people, we've had different companies, major companies come to us asking us to be able to produce for them for different like seminars, things like that. And we just can't,
no.
we're just not able to, we just can't put it in. And we can make enough for the 2 markets that we're in, along with like this week at Friday, we're doing a snack time for a sorority here at ASU. And it's wonderful. That gets us into the ASU, all of this. And but I can only do so many of those. So just like we were at the house, we could only do 4 days, tapped out. The market's been amazing to us. We'll stay at the markets, but I think now the next step is looking for a space for us to sell out of, be able to create out of, and have people come, pick up, order, enjoy themselves, as well as us just kicking it in the back, making sure that we can, produce for whomever needs it in large amounts and do a lot of catering.
Yeah, as a fellow events person, I think about all the schlepping of like, if you don't have a spot, like schlepping stuff to the kitchen and then back to the car and then to the market, and then like just all of the moving of stuff is physically and mentally exhausting, of like that list of, did we get everything? Oh shoot, I forgot the special spoon. Like there's just so many things.
Oh
that get
yeah.
moved.
Thank you for saying that, because that's absolutely true. And I think because we're not in just one location, that's exactly what happens. Every time we come back from a market, we have 3 cars, 3 vehicles, because at one point just recently we had 3 markets. All those cars, all 3 cars have exactly the same thing in them. We have generators, tents, tables, banners, everything, all of that, that, a lot of people don't think about. Like, it costs money. A generator is $1,000. It's like, it just doesn't pop up like that. So,
and it's heavy.
And it's
like
heavy. It's 100
and
something
very
pounds.
heavy.
That's why I'm so glad we have really young kids. But I mean, it is. And it is. It's like, I did it all last summer. My husband did it all last summer. Our staff did it. In markets, Gilbert and Uptown go all year round. we're outside in 110-degree weather. We start at 7 a.m. and it goes till 11. But if people show up, I'm showing up. You know, if you're coming out because you want our product and you want our pretzels, I'm there. I don't care if it's 2 people or 100. That means something to us. People are making the effort, so I need to be there as well. And so, yeah, it's everything is always repacked. Chad's job, I hired him. So now he oversees the kitchen, and he is in charge of like making sure that like every car will have exactly replenished what's needed. So no matter what car you get, it's exactly the same. You won't have anything missing. But with that said, it's difficult for people sometimes to figure out like, okay, we go to the kitchen, we pick up the pretzels, you get a car, you go to the market, you pop up, you pop down, and then you're not just going to one place. You're not going just to a restaurant or to a brick and mortar. You have all these other things. So I really appreciate you saying that, because that's exactly true. You have to always be thinking completely different than just going to pick up your goods or your materials and then just going to the restaurant. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's not our staff's responsibility. We inform them. We want them to know like how the business runs, because we really, really appreciate them. And we take, they are a part of this. If it wasn't for them, this wouldn't be happening, so we feel that I know how I was treated at my other jobs throughout, and I know how I wanted to be treated, and that's how we treat, our staff as well. But if you don't understand that movement, then it's not for everybody,
Right. How did you find your people?
In our kitchen. So we had, we've had a couple of people come and then other people move on, and that's totally cool. We know that we have a lot of 20, 21-year-olds that work with us. And our goal is to, that social worker in me is, I like to teach life skills, and I like to, and I think if we can, and Chad's the same way. He's great with just his history and the things, his life. And, he went to Rice. He's an academic as well, and he's the rock star, right? Like, you've met Chad. So, people will show up at the booth and just want to take pictures of Chad. So it's like, that's great. Yeah. It's so funny. People get nervous. It's great. The whole thing is great. But our staff has come from people that have worked in the kitchen and might want extra hours somewhere. And my old job, there was a supervisor there that said her sister had just moved in town from Boston looking for something, had run a coffee shop for 21 years. I was like, bring her. And she's still with us. And we have 3 really solid, well, I can't even say that. All 5 of our kids are solid. Not everybody works in the kitchen. Some people just work at the market. So, it's a lot. But this team is solid, and I'm so grateful, because I know it's hard to keep people on and to show up and do those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, and your background with what I would call people work, I'm sure is a helpful skill in finding employees with similar values and work ethics. Yeah. So
you also want to give people a chance, right? Like, there's sometimes that too, right? So
yeah, right. And but like I think there's probably some secret sauce that goes on in your brain about like, yes, worth it. Let's do it. Yeah. So I'm curious because we have plenty of business owners who listen to the podcast, who might not have as much skill in recruiting and hiring. So are there certain questions that you ask or things that you want to know from a potential employee before you offer them a position?
Well, we find that asking questions to people aren't always easy for them, right? It's people get nervous. They don't know how to answer certain questions, especially if we're working with young adults. It's like, so we did it first. And what I felt maybe I should do is invite them to come in and roll pretzels and talk with everybody and see how that vibe goes, and see if it's something like, are they asking questions? Are they interested? Can they communicate? Can we just have that go back and forth. And I am a pretty good read. There are a lot of, there are definitely people that just need that chance. And that for me has been really, come in and roll for a couple hours. Let's see how it works. And I always ask them, what do you think tell us how your experience was with us. Do you see something that maybe we could do different? Is there something that like was uncomfortable for you? Or, or maybe rolling pretzels, standing and rolling is physical too. And so it's like, if it's not for you, it's okay. Nobody's upset. It's just about, but if it's not a good fit for us either, then so everybody knows up front, like, let's talk, come in again, see where you're at. And that's kind of really like how our interview process goes. So it's a little bit different.
Love that. Thank you. I want to put a pin in that while we take a quick break to hear from our sponsor.
Leadership Talks is proudly sponsored by Ascent Solutions, where we believe people are the best investment. Do you manage a team or own your own business? Research shows that when employees feel invested in and feel a sense of connection with the people they work with, they are more productive and more likely to stay with their current employer. At Ascent Solutions, we offer services including leadership coaching, professional development workshops, and brand development consulting, all of which are available in person or online. It is always the right time to invest in yourself and in your team. Visit us at ascentsolutions.net to schedule a complimentary consultation today.
So back to the pin. You are actually not the first person I've heard from recently who is changing their hiring process from the traditional, we will look at resumes and we will ask very tough questions about weaknesses, to what I would call the vibe check of, hey,
yeah, I love that.
Meet people, hang out, do something, and let's see if the vibe is right for each of us. So I'm fascinated to watch this, what I hope will be an evolution. Because I think you're right. And in a previous career, I interviewed thousands of early 20-somethings in rooms full of interviewers. So there'd be 4 or 5 interviewers and one person who was early in their career. And that's so much pressure that just why do we need to do that to people? And so I'm trying to think of creative ways to be kind to people. And as an employer, who would I be to bring somebody in and intimidate them? Like, that's not the culture I want to create for my business.
Exactly. And just you talking about it makes my hands sweat, because I remember having to go through those things. Yeah. But again, when at the old organization that I worked for, like it was like, come in and just, sure, they're asking you things because you're going to be working with other individuals, but when somebody says, what are your weaknesses? And everybody's looking it up on Google. Like, what's my weakness? I don't know. Like, how do you actually do that with a spin to it? And it's like, I don't want that. I just want people to come in and be themselves. We want to be able to help people that need the help. And if they want to, grow with us, that's awesome. We take care of everybody. We pay well. We make sure that, like, if you need time off, we're open to that. We also, we're not doing benefits right now, but if anybody needs something, they know they can ask us. And that's something too, that I think it's a way, I have to remember that my employees are spending their time choosing to be with us. And I'm grateful for that. It's not just about my business and like, I need to have this. It's like my business runs because of them. If I don't have them, nothing happens. So I understand that very well. And I, as we're growing, they also benefit. And we take care of, I used to watch a lot of, how Dutch Bros started and how that all looked. And like, I find different small businesses that have been very successful, to like, are there things in those plans that like I like to maybe take a look at and using our own business. So,
How do
I
you
think people
research
are number one.
things?
I own stock.
Okay.
I own stock with them. You know what? I've been going to Dutch Bros since they opened here in Tempe, and I've learned a lot from the employees that work there and have been from the very beginning and how they do their process. You can't franchise through them unless you work for them. Now that they've gone public, I mean, they're opening like crazy all over the, West Coast. And it's interesting for me to watch because it was two brothers that had a coffee cart and now they've turned into this whole different culture. And I'm watching how things are changing as they're growing and kind of taking notes of those things. And I mean, the goal is to grow, but I also think that there's a point where you're at where you need to be, and I think that for us, like, my vision doesn't go into franchising or, my vision goes into having a really badass pretzel company that people can come and really enjoy from being a kid to being as old as you are. And if we can bring you happiness, like, that's great. And that's enough for me. And that's enough for Chad and for us to have a nice life when we're older. We are Gen X, we started, I'm 56. I started when we were 54, and Chad's actually younger than me, even though he looks older than me. It's okay. He'll tell you the same. But that's for us. That's another area too, to really promote, like, look, yes, we found something that's really working, but when people are like, you can do whatever you want. It's like, sure you can, but it's not always so easy. You have to be able to have the resources. We didn't take loans. We've paid everything cash out of our own pocket. We've totally been like debt free. We're trying to just keep the business going where it's growing. And it's, the minute it sets us back, that's when we have to really have that conversation. But right now, as we're growing, we're making smart moves and slow and having the right people around us. And that's key too, because if I don't surround myself with people that know more than I do, I'm stuck, and that's something that my father had taught me too. Always surround yourself with people that know more, and don't be jealous. Don't not listen,
Yeah.
Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Right.
Right.
So
yeah, I think it takes a lot of confidence to be able to trust yourself and surround yourself with these really bright people and trust them and trust that they have your best interests and your business interests at heart. And I agree of whatever the rule is about, like, you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And
right.
as I reflect on my own life and who I spend time with, absolutely, like, that has definitely held true for me. You mentioned goal setting. I'm curious if what's your process? How do you sit down and write them? Do you lay in the hammock? Like, how do you come up with your goals or your vision?
It's I know this just sounds so lame, but it's like, I love so much about marketing. I love so much about just like where we're at. And it's like, there's nothing we can't do. There's nothing I can't try, right? There's nothing. So it's like, what are the goals? And I know people are like, you should have a 3 to a 5 year goal. I understand that, but I don't process like that. I can't think that far ahead. It just doesn't work for me. I think it's by a vibe. And like you said, it's a vibe check, right? It's like, where are we at? Where are we at right now? What can we do? What comes next? And that might be just with all, I want to say maybe smoking a little and hanging out and kind of just, and it's like, Chad's been sober for 25 years. I've never been a big drinker. I just don't, and but I am a product of ADD and have been from before anybody even knew what that was. And I don't medicate. I don't think, but for me, the process of being able to keep things in order and to, I go with my gut. And I think that's the same with people. And I think that's the same with like who we put ourselves around, right? It's like, how do you feel when you're around that person or those people? I think we've all had times in our lives where we've surrounded ourselves with people that maybe weren't great for us. And if we learn from those experiences, we only get stronger, and we understand, like, I won't have drama. I refuse to have drama in my life. I won't bring any of that on. This is the one life I have with my husband, and we deserve to have the best life that we can create. And we'll fail, and we'll succeed, and we'll try different things. But they're never huge, because it's like, slow. We've watched so many people go really fast and unfortunately like have to backpedal, and everybody does their things differently. And I think just after a lot of time learning, taking time, making good choices, that's kind of really where the planning comes in. It's like, do you want to try this? Should we do this? Do we do another market? Do we not? Do we open a spot? What are we looking for? Can we afford it? Can we pretend that we can afford it? We'll stay in Tempe no matter what. Tempe is our home. We're a Tempe pretzel, so it's the place that created my music career, managing bands, everything like that. This is my home. This is where, Chad and I don't have family, so we are each other's family. And this is what we do. So it's a wonderful gift that the universe has handed to us. And we've worked really hard to keep it where it's at,
Yeah. Maria, I think you are the gift. Yes, the pretzels are great, but you are just such a bright and shining person who I can tell is living her truth. And, the more people who can live the truth, the more that light shines, and that inspires other people to do the same. And I think, when we make choices that bring us our own joy, that creates the space for others to do the same. And I love that your answer to goal setting was, I don't. Because you're the successful business owner who's growing this really cool and inventive and creative business. And, this trope of, in order to be successful, one must sit and write their 3 and 5 year plan.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that looks like.
Right. And maybe that's a nod to the system of, if you're looking for capital, those are things that investors are looking for, but that's not, making the choice to invest in your own business and invest in yourself creates a space where you can live true to you. And I think that's great that you are this wonderful example of, you don't need a 3-year plan, just do it and take thoughtful risks that, there will, I think as an entrepreneur and as a creative, we learn to experience failure in a different way. Of like, before I started creating, I was like, oh my God, failure must be perfect. And now it's like, well, there'll be another, whatever the thing is, like if I'm taking thoughtful risks and having smaller failures, like, and even as I work with my students, like I try to create spaces where they can safely mess up, because when we mess up, we learn so much more and grow. Yeah, that I'm like, I don't want anybody to fail the class or even fail an assignment, but in those moments where it doesn't go quite the way we thought it would, like that's where our best learning happens and what can inspire creativity and vision for what's next.
Sure. And isn't that a part of forward thinking too, right? And being able to like think through those issues of saying like, what didn't go right? How can I fix that without having everything crumble? And I think that just takes a lot of time for self and understanding how what do you consider devastating and failure, like true failure. I think just for all the different small businesses I've had, I mean, I've sold everything from CBD to, having dogs and coffee photography and doing like, oh my God, widgets and you name it. But I mean, they've been successful to the point to where I've made it successful. And without trying, you don't know. And I think that's something that I really share with people that ask me the same questions. It's like, you can have an idea all you want, but if you don't try it, it doesn't have to, you just said, it doesn't have to be perfect. We think it has to have some type of formula, but it really doesn't. It's yours. You get to create it the way you create it. And I really think too, when you listen to other people, I'm sure you've had this too. People are like, you know what you should do?
Oh, the should.
And it's like, I appreciate that, but it's like, or you should do this. Or I'm like, you are more than welcome to open up your own pretzel store, or you're more than happy to go and try baking or do something that you want to do, only when it gets to a point where it's over the top. But I want people to try things. I want people to like know that there's a success, even if it doesn't work out 100%. You can chalk it off for doing it. You did it. You tried it. Now the next thing, try that too. There's so many cool things out there. It's just about trying. It doesn't have to be a franchise. It doesn't have to be $1 billion company. It can make something that just makes you comfortable to where you can have a few coffees during the week,
Right. And go to local coffee shop and not worry about
exactly.
the card.
Exactly. It's like you're allowed to have those joys in your life. You just have to know how to do it that works for you. And if it works for you, it doesn't have to work for everybody else.
Right. Well, Maria, yes, all the yes. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
I think that, in prior, we were talking about beforehand filling out, the information of who I was. And I'm thinking like, the quote that I follow very well is "To thine own self be true," right? This is something that my father always used to say to me. I have it tattooed on my arm. It's just a reminder that you are who you are, and only you get to control yourself and your surroundings, and the strength comes from within, and your ideas are so powerful that you don't have to ask anybody for permission. You can just try. You don't have to have a ton of money in the bank. There's always a way. And that might sound like, when I would hear people say, you can do anything. And it's like, well, sure, but you have to make it work for you. It doesn't have to be large. It really doesn't. It can just be something that your passion comes out about. Like, who knew? I never knew I was going to be a concert photographer. That just happened. And like, dang, if that changed my world too. So, I just think if people just trust themselves to try something, whatever that is, then that's really where the joy starts.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been a joy for me, and will certainly be a bright spot of my week. So Maria with the Salted Knot, thank you. I'm so excited for your growing business, and I think we should pre-schedule another chat in a year because there will be just so much growth and change. To our production team, thank you. To our listeners, thank you. And a friendly reminder that you matter, you are enough, and the world is a brighter place when you let your light shine. So until next time, thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Kate.
You've been tuning into Leadership Talks with your host, Dr. Kate Vawter. You can find this show and learn how to be one of the best in the world at www.ascentsolutions.net and on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing the show with others.